Hey, what's going on, guys? Once again, it's me, Robert Athey, with another episode of Fantasy Football Films. On today's episode, I'm going to be going over film from Thursday night's matchup between Green Bay and Chicago and giving you my thoughts on the fantasy options. The theme for today's episode is everyone needs to relax. I think a lot of people out there are freaking out about multiple players from the NFL kickoff game, but I don't think there's any reason to panic, with the exception of one player I will be discussing on this episode. Before I get to the film, I will give a quick recap of what happened. To many, this wasn't the most exciting game to watch. Green Bay was able to win 10-3, but neither team really played a great game. Both teams kept their starters out of the preseason and they all looked rusty. Essentially, this looked like a competitive preseason game. Neither quarterback really played their best game, but Rodgers was clearly a class above Trubisky, and that was really the difference that decided the game. The Packers were able to connect on a couple of opportunities on one drive and scored the one and only touchdown. Both defenses did look good, but I think there will be some regression when teams settle into the season and play better, so I'm not ready to crown either defense as of yet. But I will say that I expected both of these defenses to be good this season, and so far, there's no reason to doubt that. Overall, I think Chicago actually played a better game than Green Bay as a whole. If not for one drive where Aaron Rodgers was able to loft a ball to Jimmy Graham, Green Bay really didn't play very efficiently on offense. Neither team could run the ball because both teams basically sold out on the run and played a bunch of perimeter man coverage. Because neither team was able to have consistent success against the coverage, neither defense really changed up what they were doing. That is what dictated everything that happened as far as fantasy football. Running backs stunk it up on the ground. Trubisky relied on Allen Robinson as the veteran wide receiver, and Matt Nagy kept running Mike Davis and Cohen into the flat, trying to jumpstart the passing game, which never really got off the ground for either team. I'll give my takeaways from Thursday night before I get into some of the film. First, Allen Robinson played well, but I'm not expecting him to be getting this level of volume every single week. What essentially happened in the game is the offense wasn't really able to break up any of Green Bay's man coverage consistently, so the Packers kept running tight press coverage on the receivers. The only man Trubisky can really trust to consistently beat their man coverage was Robinson, and thus he relied on him to get open and hopefully get rid of the ball before Kenny Clark or Preston Smith smoked him in the face. Second, Aaron Jones had a positive night for fantasy. Yes, I know that sounds weird considering he only had 39 yards on the ground, but he made the most of what was given to him and he looked like the clear best back in the backfield. He got 14 touches in a game that Green Bay wasn't able to move the football. When Green Bay settles in for the season, they're going to be able to sustain drives and thus more volume and efficiency from Jones and the rest of the Green Bay offensive weapons. I think this is just a rough beginning of a great season from Jones, and I'd be looking to target him in trades. I'll talk more about the Bears' rushing attack when I wrap up my thoughts, but these were my primary key takeaways from the game concerning fantasy football. The first play is the big downfield reception by Marquez Valdes-Scantling at the beginning of the second quarter, and it's 1st and 10. Rodgers motions Jimmy Graham into the slot, and the defensive adjustment indicates that they're in a zone defense. The Bears are in a zone defense, which is run frequently by them called cover two robber. After the snap, the near side safety is going to rotate down into underneath coverage. What determines which side of the field is going to step forward is which side the Green Bay's best receiver, Devontae Adams, is on, which on this play is the top of the screen or the right side of the formation. The Packers have called a great play action sweep play to attack this defense. LaFleur knows how the Bears like to play zone, so if the safety to the side of Marquez Valdes-Scantling steps forward, Rodgers knows he will get a 1v1 matchup over the center of the field with MVS. If the safety doesn't step forward and MVS carries the near side corner like he is playing a cover three, Mercedes Lewis is going to slide into the weak point of the cover three zone. Rodgers IDs the safety and knows Marquez Valdes-Scantling is about to be open. Rodgers delivers the pass downfield and completes it to MVS for a huge gain to start off the drive that eventually led to a touchdown. I chose this play to show that there were signs of good play calling in the game, even though the majority of the play Thursday night was overall sloppy. I'm not going to put LaFleur onto a pedestal by any means, but he showed signs of a good play caller at times. The offense wasn't really consistent enough to evaluate the play calling as a whole, though. It was just a defensive slugfest for the most part. However, the difference in the game was Aaron Rodgers being able to make a few plays that Trubisky was unable to do. Once the Packers establish some rhythm on offense, I think all the fantasy assets that are in Green Bay will improve in value, so there isn't any reason to be concerned with them, in my opinion. The next play is from the third quarter, and I wanted to pull this play to talk about the running game. The Packers are running duo to the right side with Aaron Jones in the backfield. The Chicago Bears defense was just eating up the Packers' run game on Thursday, so Green Bay wasn't really able to get anything going. The point I want to make with this play is Aaron Jones's production had nothing to do with his ability more than it was Khalil Mack and the Bears defense just blowing up the Packers blocking scheme. Again, on this play, the Packers are running duo, which features double teams on the defensive tackle Akeem Hicks to the right and nose tackle Eddie Goldman to the left. The natural hole that is going to be created on this play is the gap between Akeem Hicks and Khalil Mack on the edge. The reason you know this is because Brian Beluga, who is the right tackle, is going to get a deuce block on Hicks and then work his way up to the inside linebacker, who's Roquan Smith. If you're hearing these names and you're saying to yourself, hey, those are a bunch of Pro Bowl skill level defenders, you are already seeing the problem with this play developing. But the absolute and biggest problem is Khalil Mack, who's supposed to be blocked one-on-one with Mercedes Lewis, the second string tight end. This is one of the plays that I look at LaFleur and just shake my head saying, what on earth are you doing? You have no business calling this play and relying on Mercedes Lewis to stop Khalil Mack from collapsing into the hole. This play didn't have a shot at developing. As you will see later, Aaron Jones does read the play correctly and adjusts. As expected, Khalil Mack slips past Lewis virtually untouched, ready to flatten Aaron Jones. Jones realizes he isn't getting to the hole and just cuts upfield trying to fit between the deuce blocks and get back to the line of scrimmage and try to prevent a loss on the play. I didn't choose this play to talk about the specific attributes of Aaron Jones, just to explain why the Green Bay running game wasn't effective in week one. Chicago just has so much talent on their defense, and if your offense isn't firing on all cylinders, the Bears are going to tee up against your running backs. This entire equation equals a poor running performance. I will say that Aaron Jones looked like the clear lead back despite ceding some carries to Jamal Williams. The point I want to make is if you have Aaron Jones in your fantasy football team, you don't need to panic. Green Bay is going to improve, and when they do, the running game efficiency will shoot up. The only point of concern I would have is LaFleur's run play calling, but I'm not going to base my opinion on that on this game alone. I just wanted to point out that on this play, it was a really questionable play call. I would consider Aaron Jones a borderline RB1, high-end RB2 that you drafted him as. The final play I decided to showcase, I chose to talk about what Chicago was doing throughout most of the game and why that equation equaled the fantasy production we saw. It's the beginning of the fourth quarter, 2nd and 10, and Green Bay is in cover one man. Green Bay had a similar game plan defensively as Chicago. They just lined up in man coverage and would send pressure, daring you to beat the man-to-man matchups, which Chicago wasn't really able to do outside of Cohen and Allen Robinson. The Bears are running a somewhat of a clear out concept, and Robinson to the right side running the primary crossing route. The read here is simple. If you know Green Bay is in man coverage, the entire play is designed just to get Robinson in space and get the completion. All the other routes are essentially irrelevant unless Robinson is doubled. In that case, Trubisky would just hit his running back check down. This is what the Bears were doing the majority of the game. Once their game plan fell apart, they basically said, F it, we're just going to locate Robinson on the 1v1 matchup and have him beat the defender. As you can see here, Robinson gets a rub and gets wide open. There were many plays I could have chosen from, but the only thing I wanted my audience to take away is that Chicago's offensive game plan was borderline trash to begin the game. It may not have been a coaching schematic thing as much as it may have just been the offense trying to get some rust off. Eventually, they abandoned what they were trying to do originally and just kept throwing to Robinson, hoping they could sneak out of the game and regroup next week. It almost worked until Trubisky threw an interception in the end zone towards the end of the game. I also chose this play just to point out how the defense played the Bears, as it validates how the fantasy production was dispersed. Because the offense had to abandon what they do when they are rolling, the Bears just turned to Allen Robinson to defeat 1v1 matchups. So obviously he would be the one receiving 13 targets, and to his credit, he made some spectacular plays to help move the offense. Mitch was also himself for the most part. He made some really great throws and then made some bonehead plays that cost the Bears the game. I don't think he was as bad as he played on Thursday, but I believe this would suggest he hasn't made any significant improvements since last year. So expect that to be the level of quarterback he is and adjust your expectations to this offense accordingly. So for my final thoughts on the game, I think overall it's a positive sign from Robinson. He played a great game and was one of the only players that looked ready to play Thursday night. I think it speaks to his consistency this year as a fantasy football asset, but it's difficult to see him sustaining the volume. When Chicago settles in for the season, they're going to spread the ball around more and not have to rely on him to beat his man coverage every single play. For Green Bay's receiving options, I think you just have to chalk this game out. The passing game will improve. I do think we can say that MVS has made a significant improvement in year two, and he looked good on the opportunities that were given to him. I think he looks like the wide receiver 2 in this offense right now, but don't forget about Allison. I think when Green Bay gets their passing game figured out, they're going to get him much more involved, sort of shuffling the deck with their receivers that are not named Devontae Adams. I've already mentioned the Green Bay running back, so I'll give my thoughts on Chicago's. Cohen is still my favorite back as far as value is concerned. I'm concerned about his week-to-week value because he is primarily, if not entirely, a receiving threat. But he plays a key role in this offense, and I'm not concerned with him being taken off the field. This is what I would expect from him on a week-to-week basis, with a touchdown or two mixed in with maybe a few carries. I mentioned that I was concerned with one player from this game, and that player is David Montgomery. I thought he looked really good when given the ball, but it was pretty clear that Chicago really values Mike Davis's receiving ability, which is pretty good too. The two essentially split time on the field, and until Montgomery can supplant him, Montgomery is going to struggle to carve out a significant opportunity, in my opinion. Not only that, but he's going to have to beat out Mike Davis, who is a pretty good player himself. Unfortunately, I think you are kind of stuck if you have Montgomery. I think the best strategy in fantasy is just to wait and see just with him and see if he can carve out a bigger role. Hopefully he will get more opportunity in the weeks to come, but I'm not confident that will happen at Davis's expense. Finally, I think both Rodgers and Trubisky will both improve. Specifically Trubisky, he's not as bad as the stats or game tape was last night. When the offense can sustain drives in the year, I think it will open up better opportunities downfield. And that concludes another episode of Fantasy Football Films. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button if you like our content. You can find me on Twitter at RobFFFilms. I'm Robert Athey. Thanks for watching.